All right, we're back with another special edition for you. Our special guest is a world renowned DJ, radio personality, and much, much more from the Shred and Reagan show, 97 Rock in Buffalo. It is Reagan. Good morning. How are
Hi,
you?
Jay. How are you?
Doing fantastic. It is early here in California, but we love it. We're up. I know you are no stranger to early. Morning shows operate
Oh
on a
yeah.
whole nother schedule.
Oh yeah. All the time. All the time. And they don't care. It's you're a morning person regardless of whether you're actually a morning person or not.
Yeah, I tell the story. I've been into business for 50 years myself. Watching Ted Nugent warm up at Mile High Stadium. It was a festival in '76, and it was Nugent and Hart and the Cars and my gosh, UFO and everybody. And
Wow.
Ted was warming up like 3 hours before he went on stage in his trailer. Every time somebody'd come in and out of his trailer, you would hear Ted wailing. So when he hit the stage for the first song, it was like the third encore, you know.
Nice.
So that's
Prepared.
that's what you got to do in the morning. You got to sound like you've been up all day, you know. Do you start at 6 or 5?
Six. Oh
Okay.
no, the first 10 minutes we all sound like we're, just waking up, but
Oh, okay.
sure.
You guys are
Yeah,
shoveling.
I know what you're saying. You got to be ready, right? It's a full
Yeah.
day.
You see these morning newscasters on TV, and nobody's looking groggy at all.
No, no, they're up early too, no doubt.
Fortunately for you, you are audio primarily, so
Right, right. They don't
that's
have to look at the face, right? Yeah, sure.
you got a
Absolutely.
face for radio, like they say, all that.
That's it.
But tell us, we all love Rush. I got into Rush, like I say, being a promotion guy for 50 years. I got into Rush, real time when they first came out in the 70s and loved them ever since. 76 through
Yeah.
80, I lived right below Vancouver in the last city in America. It was called Bellingham, in between Vancouver and Seattle. So I would pick up Canadian radio. And of course, Rush were gods before they really became mainstream here with Tom Sawyer and Spirit of Radio and all that.
Oh,
But
without a doubt.
yeah, they were already, the Led Zeppelin of Canada. How
Yeah.
about you? When did they first come on your radar?
2112.
Okay.
That's 2112 was the one that really, because it had the story, it's got the great music, and so I'd heard 21, yeah, or Tom Sawyer, but
Yes.
immediately everybody's like, well, if you think Tom Sawyer's good, you've got to hear 2112, and that's where you realize this band was far more than just a good rock song on the radio. Um,
Well, yeah,
and
and
they've always been.
that
What's
album
that?
cover. I mean, the album cover was like Pink Floyd, Dark
Oh
Side of the
yeah,
Moon. It was classic.
yeah. It's amazing, right? You know these guys were something different and special. So, we love them from that point forward. And so I had heard a little while back, just a couple of months ago, that they were doing some sort of fundraiser. It was in the fall for the Neil Peart Memorial, and we had not heard anything about this. And so for us, it sounded like this might be a fun thing to get involved with and try to help because it wasn't getting a lot of noise and it wasn't getting a lot of play on this side of the border. And we had done a project years ago, a TV theme CD project, where a bunch of local bands did TV themes, and it was a lot of fun. And so the thought was, let's take that and do Rush covers or Rush tribute songs and see if there's a bunch of bands in the area that'd be willing to do. Now it's a little bit tougher, right? Like Rush songs are a little more complicated,
Yeah,
but the bands here have embraced it. And because Buffalo's a border town, it
sure.
loves the Tragically Hip. It loves Rush. And they
Yeah.
had a huge influence on this area. And so all these bands, even though they may not directly play that type of prog rock that they used to play as Rush did, um, they're still greatly influenced by Rush. And they've taken to it and they started recording their favorite Rush songs and sending it off to us. So the goal would be streaming project. I got a couple of prices on albums, getting some albums pressed maybe in Toronto,
Okay.
and hoping we could do that, and then a tribute concert in the fall to try to raise money for this project.
Well, yeah, I mean Buffalo, a lot of history, bands and stuff coming out of that area. Of course, upstate from New York, right on the border of Canada. Of course, Tallis, the great Billy Sheehan came out of there, and
There you go.
who's
Right.
who's more influenced by Geddy Lee than the amazing Billy Sheehan on bass?
Yeah.
It's a lot of influence. But yeah, the rush off, the great North American rush off is what we're talking about. Of course, Neil was the iconic drummer. Truth be told, he was not the first drummer. John Rutsey on the first album. A lot of
That's right.
people
Yeah.
don't know, but of course, everything since was around the professor. And when Neil called it quits, the band called it quits. Getty and Alex are asked every day, you guys getting back together? When we gonna have a new tour, new music? And they're like, hey, our heart and soul is gone. We're
Yeah. It's so hard to try and recover from something like that.
yeah, we're two wheels on a tricycle. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah, but
about
at the same time, there are a
yeah.
lot of drummers who are talented enough that I think would be able to sit in with those guys.
Well, they always
Uh,
say Mike Portnoy, Dream Theater and all that. A lot of people say
yeah.
Mike.
Taylor Hawkins, sadly, he would have been one of those.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talented guys. So, I mean, our hope is at some point that these guys, I hope they get bored enough with their lives that they decide to, even if it's not one drummer and they want to bring a bunch of guest drummers out to try to do some of these different songs, I would hope at some point those two guys give it one more shot at least and do a couple of shows, even if they don't want to call themselves Rush, but do a couple of shows, and try to bring back some of those songs, and maybe do a concert or two. That'd be great.
Yeah, Lee Lifeson, whatever they call it. Of course,
Yeah, right.
if all we're left with is those Taylor Hawkins tribute show they did in London and L.A., that might be the closest we get. Who knows? But they're
Yeah,
kind of like Led Zeppelin. When John Bonham went down, Robert Plant said, "That's it. It's a wrap. We're not bringing in Tom, Dick, or Harry for this thing. It's a wrap. Our
yeah,
heartbeat is gone. So hard to tell. But the Neil Peart Memorial at Lakeside Park in his hometown, I understand there's a cause to. Is it put up a couple bronze sculptures?
yeah. So, I drove up a couple of weeks ago, and the way they've described it to us is pretty much, what is there right now, which is a simple pavilion, and it's got a place for people to have a little picnic, and it's
Okay,
labeled the Neil Peart Pavilion, but there's nothing else. And it's beautiful. I mean, there's a nice pier you can walk out onto and boats nearby. But they'd like to add more to it, and they'd like to make it, plant more trees and make it a sort of a rest stop, with benches and then these uh, statues that they want to cast. And the bronze statues are not cheap, but they
sure.
figured that that would be, one of the nice things. And then Neil's sister, Nancy, heard about this, and she's pretty close. She got in a car, she drove over, and we had her on the air, and she was telling us about how they have a tree planted for each family member. Sadly, their father and their other brother also died, and brain cancer is just something that they're as a family are dealing with. But the trees that they planted for them are there as well. So she said, in a way, they're all together, still, but so that these trees would be part of it as well as the rest of it. And it would be one of those places to, constantly remind people about Neil, about where he used to go to try to come up with lyrics for these songs, where he used to write and read and
Yeah,
think. And it'd be one of those places for a lot of people, not only, in St. Catharines, Port Lucie and the rest, but being a border town, fans from either Toronto or in Buffalo could cross the bridge and go over and check the place out as well. So that's kind of the goal. And from what we had heard, those guys, Getty and Alex, had thought about doing something like this, and then COVID hit, and like for all of our plans, derailed a lot of different things. And so in a way, this sort of brings that back again, and hopefully we can get some momentum throughout the summer into the fall, and see how much money we could raise. And if we could sell, they're going to put a wall along with the bronze statues. There's going to be a wall, a tribute wall,
Okay.
and for 500 Canadian, I think it comes to like 367 US, $367. If you buy a plaque, you can put whatever you want on it, whether you and your cousin were huge Rush fans at one time, and it's a cool idea or a brother, family member, your father, and you wanted to put your names on these plaques and a message, whatever the message will be. If we could sell those out, everything's paid for. So if there's a Rush fan and you know, you think that $367 is doable to buy one of these plaques, and then you can put whatever you want on it. We sell those out, it's paid for. The bronze statues are cast, the park is built, and you've got a nice place and a nice tribute to Neil. So that's something else to think about.
Yeah, it's kind of like a brick in the wall, we're building the
That's
wall
it.
with the little plaques,
Yep.
everybody's got their name on it. It's bragging rights. You can go with your friends up there, big Rush fans, listen to
Yeah.
some music. Of course, have those bronze sculptures, which really cements Neil's presence right
Yeah.
there in this park. And I think that is hugely, hugely important. Now, you talk about this covers album. Are you limited to a certain number? Are you going to pick a certain top 10, top 20? Or are you going to look at everything that's quality and maybe make this a double album? What's the thought?
Yeah, I mean, cost is always, a factor. If I go to our managers and throw a double album out at them, they might throw me out of the room. But we might. It depends on what we have, and what we can put together. The streaming project. My friend Mike Parrish, he's been involved in a lot of these projects over the years. And at the very least, we can put together a streaming project and try to make some money off of that. But the album would be a separate and you know, I mean, 4 songs per side, and so we'd have to pick 8 songs to throw on there.
Okay.
But so far, we've gotten some really interesting songs. Um, we heard from a Rush tribute band in Calgary, and they've sent a song. The people in Scotland do a big Rush tribute every year, and so Scotland's getting involved. There's a band in central Pennsylvania that does it. There's a huge band in Buffalo. They're called Analog Kids, and they have contributed to it, as well as one in. They do some prog rock, but they also do Rush tributes. They're called Stavo, and they're out of Rochester, so they're going to do it. There's a cover band in town that did one, Deb and the Night Crew, and they're phenomenal. Somebody did a ska version of a Rush song, which would probably get included. The Polka Boys, polka's big in Buffalo. So there's this polka band, and they're like, well, we want to do it. So we're like, yeah, absolutely, do a polka version. So we have a lot of different ones to choose from. It's just now about trying to fill the album. And once we do that and get the price, hopefully we can make that work too.
Well, that makes sense. You have a physical version, which is the top 8 or 10, and then you have the streaming, which of course can be unlimited. I mean, there's really no cost per se involved in having a streaming album on Spotify.
Yep.
It could be 20 or 30 tracks, but yeah, to get in that top 8, top 10, that is the goal. Want to get the word out, all you Rush lovers. If you play music, and we've definitely seen, like you say, it's complex music. It's not like putting together a Beatles cover band or a Stones band where you can kind of be a little loose and all that. We're talking
Right.
complexities. I know it
Yeah.
even. I've heard talks with Alex recently, and they're so complex. He looks at his work and like, damn, I can't
Yeah.
even
How would I play
believe.
that today?
Yeah, I can't even believe what we did, man. I feel like an old timer, man, trying to get back into NFL or something.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is challenging, but yeah, I spin their music on a regular basis and love it. Put together a playlist, and yeah, I remember, like I say, living up on the Canadian border on the west side. Um, they were gods, and I remember on the Hemispheres tours they came through, and Pat Travers, another Canadian who's well known in America, was the opening act. Of course, he had Tommy Aldridge on drums. Later, Nico McBrain of Iron Maiden came into the
Wow.
band, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was something, and yeah, I was blown away how the Northwest, and I guess being proximity to British Columbia had something to do with it. They embraced Rush early on, and I know some people took a minute to get used to Geddy's high pitched voice, but then, like I say, when you heard of Tom Sawyer, or Spirit of Radio, and Limelight, you realize it's not that bad. There's hills and valleys. He's not always screeching. So
Yeah.
it really
But
became
you're
more
right.
palatable.
I mean, the drumming's complicated, the songs are complicated, and then on top of it all, if you're going to try to do a cover and you got to hit Geddy's insane range, that makes it even tougher. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, we're talking one of the greatest bands of all time. Like I say, I refer to them as the Canadians, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
Of course, you had Triumph, you had Guess Who, you had a number of other Canadian bands. But who can compare to Rush? They are so big, and of course, you being right on the border town and the home of the Buffalo Bills and the NFL and all that. It's kindred spirits. I know. I used to. I was only 45 minutes where I lived in Bellingham that I could be in, not only in Vancouver, but at the Pacific Coliseum, which is their big arena. And I saw
sure.
Queen with Thin Lizzy. I saw The Who. I saw, my gosh, you name it. Kiss with Cheap Trick on the Love Gun tour. All the big tours went through there. A lot of times, bands would start their tour in something like Vancouver. Then they'd come down the West Coast and across the Midwest and down the East Coast to the South. And it's really great memories. And that's what Rush is all about. So we're celebrating the great North American Rush off. We're talking to the one and only Ragan of Shredd+Ragan, the number one morning show in Buffalo. It is the great station, 97 Rock. And Reagan, we can't thank you enough for all you do. I know
Jay, thank you so much.
there's celebration in the works here. Hopefully, we can be at that benefit, the big celebration show. We're going to get the word off. There is some amazing bands that we know that love Rush. We're going to get the word out, and can't wait to follow up with you and chart the progress. Thank you again for all you do for the Rush fans.
Yeah, no doubt, Jay. And one more time, if you're in a band and you want to, record your Rush tribute or cover song, get it off to us. We have all the links to send the songs off to us at 97rock.com, and we'll be able to play them on the air and maybe make them part of the project. Really appreciate it, Jay. Thank you so much.